All right. So first of all, I am really, really happy to be here. Well, first introducing myself, I am Fabiola Diana, a PhD student from Leiden University. And I think like the most exciting thing about being here is that it's a unique and very rare opportunity to present my design and the rationale of a new study to an audience of experts, which is a very rare opportunity in science in general. So today I'm going to introduce you to my design to investigate the physiological synchrony in cooperative and competitive context. There is an increasing amount of research to try to understand what is the social function of synchrony, but like we didn't come to a conclusion yet. And partially, of course, it's because of the large amount of different social interactions and contexts that we humans experience. But at the same time, it's also due to a substantial fragmentation of the literature, especially when it comes to understanding to what kind of interaction and how intense they should be for social synchrony to emerge. So the general opinion, at least for a few years ago, was that physiological synchrony could be a potential biological marker to investigate the affiliation between people. And indeed, several studies found that like dyadic synchrony increase affiliation and attraction, but also group synchrony increase cohesion and performance. And we think already had an amazing overview of how child-parent synchrony is beneficial for the development of insular sensitivity, interoception, and early prosociality of the child. However, my question is more about what happens with physiological synchrony when we put people in competing versus cooperating situation based on the assumption that synchrony is an affiliative catalyst. Then we also would expect synchrony to increase cooperation. But even in that sense, the answer is not that straightforward. So, it has been shown indeed that synchrony can predict cooperative success from a study, but several studies using many different tasks, and respiration, but also heartbeat, but also is higher in conflictual situations and in competitive tasks in general. Other studies instead find absolutely no difference, so that parasympathetic and sympathetic synchrony are not modulated at all by cooperative and competitive condition. So once again, we found each other in front of fragmented literatures. But to be fair, the studies that I'm highlighting right now are also differing quite a lot. For instance, some studies asked participants to look at each other, while in other studies, participants were not seeing each other's. Similarly, in some studies, they could have a conversation with each other or talk, while in other studies, they were forced to not talk with each other. There are also some design differences. So some studies are comparing condition, while others do not have a condition to compare, but are merely correlationals. Or even in the recruitment, some studies asked strangers to play the game, while others recruited friends together to play the game. And finally, but not less important, we have very different tasks that the studies were employing to prove their point. So some participants were asked to build a Lego together or against each other. Others were playing video games. Others were asked to solve a tie knot, where other participants were just playing a prisoner dilemma together. So all these different shapes of studying synchrony are really important when it comes to the computation of synchrony itself, that can in fact be affected by turn taking as well as previous bonding, but also movement artifacts. So as such, in my study, I am trying to build on the previous research and try to integrate the different facets, but also coping with some of the limitations that the studies have highlighted. So the aim is to investigate whether physiological synchrony will be more predictive of a competitive or cooperative context compared to each other, but also compared to a control condition. Crucially, we want to measure it in an ecological face-to-face setting and recruited dyads of strangers among the general public. So I thought about a between-subject design in which participants are playing an iterated prisoner dilemma with randomized payoff metrics, an idea that I actually took from computer science, in 3 different conditions. In the competitive condition, participants are given regular instruction of the prisoner dilemma, but then they are also told that only one of them, the one that earns the most tokens, will be paid at the end of the experiment. In a cooperative condition, similarly, they are getting instructions about the prisoner dilemma, but they're also told that they will both get paid based on the one that has the lowest outcome. And finally, in the control condition, they are simply having the instruction of the prisoner dilemma without further manipulation. So as we are mostly interested in their nonverbal behavior, participants will be asked to not talk with each other, but they will be able to see each other at the all point. And as the prisoner dilemma is like a very boring task, as I could hear from a lot of researchers from economic field, we decided to use this randomized way of matrices in order for them to change strategy every trial and potentially make it also a bit more intense. So our prediction, of course, are firstly based on the conditions. So we're expecting physiological synchrony to be significantly stronger in competitive versus cooperative condition, but also to be significantly stronger in cooperative versus control condition. And this is because also based on previous studies, I expect this effect to be moderated by the intensity of the interaction. At the same time, we will collect a lot of data on these experiments. So I also have a lot of exploratory questions and collaborations going on. So on one side, I am interested in observing whether a shift in strategy and behavior will also correspond to a shift in synchrony, which is, to the best of my knowledge, a question that it's unexplored. But also, as we aim to measure facial expressions as well, we aim to check the differences between the face body mimicry and the physiological synchrony in predicting behavior in different social contexts. So are they two sides of the same coin, or are they behaving differently? And finally, together with a collaboration with a computer scientist, we want to train a machine learning algorithm to predict cooperative and competitive behavior based on dyadic physiological synchronization, which personally is the most interesting question for me. And with that, I would like to thank you, my team, of course, and the organizer of this amazing event. And I'm happy to hear any feedback or ideas about this design.
Excellent, wonderful. Karina, would you like to go first?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I thought you did a really good job. It's really interesting. For me, your internet connection was sometimes cutting out a little bit, and maybe that was mine. I wasn't sure if it was yours.
Sorry about that.
And the annoying thing is that then Zoom does this thing where it then gives you still all the information is just speed up. Like, so then it's a bit funny sometimes, but that was not you, it was the internet doing that. In general, one thing I was thinking is that you probably had maybe for such a short talk, maybe too much time that was spent reviewing the literature. So it sounded almost like the introduction to what would be like a 40-minute talk easily. But it also sounds like this might be the story of your PhD, because that last slide sounds to me like that could potentially be 3 whole PhD projects by itself. So I do wish you good luck with doing all of that. It might mean that in the end, you'll only do a part of that in your PhD, and you have scope for taking a lot of that further afterwards, because it sounds like you're doing a lot. But in terms of your talk, I would say try to focus on the key previous research that you need to discuss to be able to allow the audience to understand what you want to do, so that there's more time for you to talk about what your design is or what your predictions are. Because for me, even though you reviewed a lot of the literature, I wasn't entirely clear on why you would, for example, expect necessarily stronger synchrony in the competitive compared to the cooperative context. So, I mean, I would instead spend a bit more time explaining why, like what drove you to design your task in a certain way, or what drives your expectations, rather than giving a very broad overview of all the studies that have been done before. So that's just one sort of, I mean, point of feedback that I would say is kind of, I think, the main thing I would suggest if you ever have to give such a short talk again, which I know is also it's a difficult thing to do. So well done, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, okay. So I think you could, I invite you to email me after the talk. I think there are 2 papers that you should look at that, first of all, will help you specify your prediction, because physiological synchrony, I'm guessing you're doing autonomic nervous system.
Exactly.
Yeah, the PNS and the SNS, they work a little differentially according to previous results. And we did a little meta-analysis. And I think that will really help you kind of set more specific hypotheses, which is really important at this point in the state of the art of synchrony research. And also, I think I had another thought that I missed. You see what happens when you get older? You speak and then you forget what you want to say while you're speaking. No, but one was about the predictions and another one. Okay, yeah, there is more work on cooperation versus competition specifically that can also guide you in very specific avenues. To say what exactly about competition is different than cooperation. And then that will spell out the answer to Karina's question, why would you expect it in a certain way here versus there? And maybe my final thought is that you can take this to the next level. Synchrony research has been a little stuck with main effects. Okay, we've taken the main effects as far as we can, I think, in synchrony research, and we know that the results depend. They depend on individual differences, they depend on context, and I think you can challenge yourself to have your hypothesis not be main effects, more synchrony here versus less synchrony there, but to be, there will be more synchrony if this is the context, and that will relate to certain outcomes. So think of interaction effects.
Yes, that's a very good comment. Thank you very much. Also for the literature, I personally find really hard sometimes to find literatures. You can also see that with reviewers that they always find new literatures that you looked very hard, but you couldn't find it. So I think these opportunities are really good also to connect and find more literatures that maybe I don't have access because Google algorithm is a bit mean sometimes with this context. Thank you very much for your comments. I appreciate them.
Of course, you're invited to email us and definitely email me. I have some ideas for you.
Oh, I will. I will definitely email you. Thank you very much.